Hello again, guys. It is I, Freeze700. We are back with some Kingdom Under Fire lore. This time, what the fuck is Ecclesia? So, Ecclesia is more or less a play on words, because the word originally means a church, and also the only city that Ecclesia has is Ecclesia. So, it's kind of more or less a play on words. It means a lot of things, but really it's just one word. Now, the Ecclesians, really, they're very religious, that being said. They're highly zealous in their religion. So when you look at their army composition, you're going to see a lot of paladins, which are these fellows here I have before displayed. And you're going to also see a lot of priests and magic. Except the magic they'll be using is more going to be healing magic, like holy magic. But besides that, what are they exactly? Well, Ecclesia seems to be ruled by a priest. It's not ruled by a king per se, it's ruled by a priest, a pope. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. Now, despite only being ruled Ecclesia by the pope does have a lot of sway and influence over the other human nations, like Azilia. Originally, Azilia had very close ties to Ecclesia when the nations were first sprouted. Hieronymon was well under the thumb of Ecclesia just because they subscribed to the same religion. But when it came to Azilia, Ecclesia didn't have full control of Azilia when the two nations were really young. So Ecclesia kept trying to influence through the court to get certain lords in power. But the issue is that once Prince Gernot kind of got a hold of power, he was more focused on Azilian matters, not Ecclesian matters. And when he tried to unite all of humanity to go against the Dark Legion, which is the first time this has ever really happened, Ecclesia actually backfired. Ecclesia said, whoa, no, we are not getting involved. Now, already their history is new, and already they've had human bloodshed on their history. They've already had a war between themselves, and, well, that's pretty much the way Ecclesia has always been. After the War of Heroes, Azilia was so wounded that Ecclesia just vassalized their asses. They literally just took over and made them a puppet state. But just because they did that doesn't mean that they're the biggest guys around. Hieronymon actually gained a lot of strength too because Azilia took most of the fighting for them. So with Hieronymon gaining sway, Ecclesia was starting to deal with some issues with Hieronymon. Like, Hieronymon is expansive. They're really big, but they didn't really subscribe too much to the whole religion idea. So Ecclesia would use that to their advantage. They would try to sway kings with the idea that they could be branded as heretics, which would, of course, make their citizens upset at the king, not at Ecclesia. So the kings of Hieronymon have been more or less compliant with Ecclesia. Now, there is another city here that people don't really talk about. There's a city in between Hieronymon and Ecclesia called Youngsburg. And Youngsburg is very religious, very highly religious. Now, Ecclesia claims that it's neutral ground. It's not owned. But reality is it's more 50-50. So half of it is owned by Ecclesia, the other half is by Hieronymon. Both sides claim that Youngsburg is neutral, but yet both sides have claims in that city. As to what I think about it, I think it's more or less just as a sign of why they need to keep the peace together. If they don't, then this highly religious city that holds great value to pilgrims will be in turmoil, and that doesn't look good for either side. Kind of put both your eggs in the same basket, you know? So that's kind of more or less the way Ecclesia runs their stuff, is that they don't necessarily want to engage in human conflicts, but they will if they have to. They can play dirty. And that's something that definitely drives them apart from Azilia, who is very honorable, all about chivalry, and Hieronymon. Hieronymon will do any tactic they can, but they're a little more simple folks, so they're not this well thought out with their strategies. So this is kind of where Ecclesia is. They're all about the influence and intrigue of their citizens and manipulating the masses. Because, hey, in the medieval times, religion's really the only thing that these people have going for them. Besides that, Ecclesia has had a lot of human conflicts over and over and over again. In fact, during the War of Crusaders, it's even hinted at that once Hieronymon wins, they may actually have to turn their forces the other way and start fighting Ecclesia for territory. because Ecclesia wouldn't approve of Hieronymus expanding its borders, despite the fact that the whole treaty was that Hieronymus would join the crusade with Ecclesia and get free claim to whatever they conquer. So you can kind of see that Ecclesia, although it is a holy nation, even though it's ran by a pope, even though its people are highly religious and believe in kind of Christian values, they are always on that cusp of declaring war against another human nation. It doesn't take much to push them to that point. The main reason for this is that Ecclesians are overzealous. They believe that they are right because the Pope was elected by God. So therefore, if the Pope says that we should go to war with something, they do not have a problem with this. Now that being said, Ecclesia could be viewed as the most bloodthirsty out of all the human nations, as Ecclesia has never ever done a peace treaty with the Dark Legion, ever. So they're always permanently at war with the Dark Legion, whereas Hieronymus, they'll have peace. There will be times of peace for them. They will sign peace treaties. They will let bygones be bygones. They will not actually go to war for over 100 years, whereas Ecclesia will. And there's two reasons for that. One of them is that Ecclesia is so far out of the Dark Legion's grasp that really the only thing that's going to happen is the Ecclesians will just send a crusading army in. Maybe they'll take over a spot, maybe they won't. But that's pretty much it. The Dark Legion is going to have such a hard time with linguistics, with any sort of administration to get forces assembled and walk through Hieronymus borders to get to Ecclesia. Because, mind you, Hieronymus, they may sign a peace treaty with the Dark Legion, but they have way too many scars to really sign a military access treaty. That is not going to happen. Never will they let Dark Legion troops just walk through their borders to fuck a human nation, especially one that's sorta helping them, sorta not. I mean, Ecclesians, really all they do is just keep the masses in check. But there's always that cost. Now, that being said, the main power that Ecclesia has is, of course, their tug with the peasants and their tug with the citizens, because they are the church. That being said, they also have the best business model out of any business infrastructure we can ever have. See, they're a church. And churches, their business model is you donate money to us, you feel better about yourself. That's it. We don't pay taxes, we don't do nothing. No one can win against a business model like that. So what happens is when Ecclesia just keeps reaping in these checks, just keep reaping in this money, what happens is their fighting force is actually super elite. That's what these pictures here are showing you, is that all their soldiers are heavily armored. All their soldiers are well trained and well educated. This is what the Ecclesian army is, due to the fact that they have so much fucking money. Now, also about their military is that they do have the highest form of technology in Kingdom Under Fire Crusaders time frame. So after a War of Heroes, their technology and their military prowess jumped significantly because Azilia was, as we've said, beaten. They were so strained out from the war with the Dark Legion, and also they were suffering way too much political strife that Ecclesia just pretty much instituted a puppet state on their ass. So because of that, Ecclesia started to suffer technologically, so they found a way around it. So what they do is essentially what our churches did 400 years ago, which is they would educate certain people under the church's education plan. So in other words, you'd be educated, but up to a point. You'd be educated as long as you showed that you could view it in a religious way. That didn't really work out too well. So where they get a lot of their technology from is actually from the dwarves. But here's an issue with the dwarves. See, the dwarves and the elves rely on the Ecclesians for trade because they're the closest ones to their camp in the crusading time period. Since the elves and the dwarves got kicked out of the Revance Mountain and the city of Rayan, what happened is that the Ecclesians pretty much allowed the dwarves and the elves to move up north with them into the mountains up north. But they would establish a trade. Now, this trade would be the dwarves would sell them whatever it is that they would require. But Ecclesians would give them the raw materials that they would sometimes need for certain things, like maybe just beer, maybe just wheat to make the beer, stuff like that. Well, here's the funny thing about it. The elves and the dwarves do not believe the same religion that the Ecclesians are pushing. Now, what religion could that be? Well, it's kind of a mixture of Christianity, but it's also Kingdom Under Fire. So the modern events that occurred in Kingdom Under Fire, they kind of skewed it into their image. The elves and the dwarves know what happened during the time that the Dark Legion invaded the world. They were the main ones who fought. The Ecclesians, though, twisted it to make it sound like as if humans are God's greatest creation, blah, blah, blah. The elves and the dwarves do not believe in this. They do believe in God, but they don't believe in this version of God. So because of that, the Ecclesian citizens are very bigoted towards the elves and dwarves, even though they're the allies. So they can call them the non-converted. They don't call them elves and dwarves. No. That's too high of a status. Instead, we're just going to call them the non-converted. And, well, they treat them very hostile. In fact, the only elves that exist in the city are ones that can bribe their way in. The only dwarves that can exist are ones that can bribe their way in. Now, when it comes to the merchandise that they buy from the elves and dwarves know that if they sell the best shit that they have to the Ecclesians will, at any given moment, declare a crusade against their asses and will take them out. So because of this, the dwarves have devised a very genius strategy, which is that they sell them the second-hand mortars. They sell them the shitty mortars. The elves sell them the shitty herbs and whatever it is that they require. This is because the dwarves have said it themselves. If Ecclesia does declare war on the dwarves and the dwarves have mortars that are long enough to actually reach Ecclesia from their camps. This is more than enough threat to keep the Ecclesians in check. But the Ecclesians still try, as they've developed a new weapon that the elves and dwarves do not know how to deal with, which is the Battaloon. Now, the Battaloon is highly rare to come by because of how hard it is to produce and how technologically advanced the device is. But a Battaloon is essentially a massive blimp that's got basically a giant galleon attached to the blimp, so it can actually attack land and air forces. I was going to say land and ground, that makes no sense. But land and air forces, which makes it a legendary thing to fight against. In fact, if you ever have the Kingdom Under Fire Heroes game, you can actually do a custom battle, and you can actually put a Battaloon in it just to fight it. And you can see it is a dangerous thing to fight against. It can shoot ground and air forces, which is really unheard of for such a massive construct. So because of that, it does stop the dwarves from declaring war on the Ecclesians. But just know there is hostility. So if you're an elf or dwarf and you do happen to come into the Ecclesian army, they will execute you. They will torture you. They will get you the hell out of their city as quick as they can. Now, besides that, the Ecclesians do have a good finesse with the magic and with the arts of armor crafting. As we can see, they have a few golden paladins. They have golden intricacies into their wear that shows Christian symbols like a cross, stuff like that. But the biggest downside to Ecclesia, I would say, is actually war. So war may be the biggest thing that drives our nation, the zealotry and stuff like that. But actually war is their biggest weakness. As we see this time and time again with the Ecclesians, is when they send out a crusading force, they kind of want it to end as quick as possible. And the reason why is because the longer their forces are out there, the longer and longer it happens, the more battles they fight, the more objectives they try to push for, the more and more the soldiers in that crusading force are going to start being uplifted from the veil that the Ecclesians have put over their heads, which is that they are not the good guys. They are not here fighting a holy war per se. Like, there will be many instances where the Ecclesians will be told to fight over a gold mine, and the Ecclesian soldiers will say, why are we fighting for this gold mine here? There's no religious importance about this. Why don't we go to the orc camp and destroy the orc camp and rat them out for good? Nope. Instead, the Pope will be pushing for money and pushing for diamonds and stuff. This, of course, reveals the veil to all the soldiers, saying, this war may not be for good reasons. This may not be for holy intentions. But after the War of Crusaders, after Ecclesia gets really royally fucked and gets basically subjugated by Hieronymon, we see Ecclesia start to make a comeback, but they're way too small to ever be the great power that they once were. And now they've slowly diverted themselves to more humanitarian aid. So now what they'll do is, instead of running around subjecting people to the brainwashing about religion and how important it is to believe in their God, and that if you don't believe in their God, then you will be killed, blah, 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 blah. No, instead of them doing that, instead now what they do is that they have just a few crusaders go with a priest and basically protect the priest while the priest goes about doing humanitarian things like giving food, giving water, maybe donating a little bit of gold to citizens who are suffering, maybe providing medical aid to those who are afflicted with diseases. This is a huge turn from the Ecclesians before, but the main reason for that is that the Ecclesians no longer hold the power. So basically what happens here is that when the church is in power, they will fuck over everybody, and they will make damn sure to shove their dicks in anyone's mouth if anyone actually tries to attack them. This is why Hieronymus would never declare war against Ecclesia. But now that the church got flipped upside down and turned into this small little cardboard box, now all of a sudden it's about, look how good we are, guys. We are the good guys. We are the greatest of the good guys. We're so nice. Aren't we so nice? Look at all this stuff that we're willing to provide to the peasants. You know, we'd always provide this stuff to the peasants if you guys made us big again. That's essentially what the church is doing. And that's something I find very interesting. I would love to explore it more in Kingdom Under Fire 2 if they expanded more upon it, about how the Ecclesians, if they were given another chance to rise in power again, they would kind of restart the history of having human versus human bloodshed. But besides that, this has been Freezer 700. I'm out. This has been What the Fuck is Ecclesia? And I hope you guys leave a comment down below saying what you learned, or maybe saying that you guys enjoyed it and want to see more. Besides that, I'm out. Also, quick shout out to the Kingdom Under Fire support group that has given me these photos here. These photos are fucking great. I love them. These guys are really awesome. What they do is they strongly support Kingdom Under Fire to the point that they are trying to mod it. They're trying to develop the Berja at War mod for Bannerlord. And I think you guys should really check them out. I'll provide a link down in the description. Besides that, see you guys next time. Thank you for watching.